It was one of those quiet Kentucky evenings that felt peaceful in every sense. The kind of night where you could hear the crickets humming in the fields and smell supper still lingering in the air. Inside the Combs family home, laughter echoed through the kitchen. Chris Combs sat at the table with his sisters, Amy and Tammy, the three of them surrounded by half-empty plates, memories, and the rare calm that fame had not yet taken away. They had been filming new scenes for 1000 LB Sisters earlier that week. Cameras had followed them everywhere, to doctor visits, family gatherings, even to moments they wished had stayed private. But tonight was different. There were no producers, no boom mics, no bright lights, just the family being themselves. For once, life felt normal. Chris leaned back in his chair, patting his stomach with that familiar grin that fans knew so well. "Y'all, I think I might have eaten too much chili," he joked, groaning playfully as Amy laughed. Tammy rolled her eyes but couldn't help smiling too. It was a rare, beautiful moment, the kind they had fought hard to have after years of health struggles, surgeries and constant cameras. But behind that smile, something was wrong. Chris had been feeling off all week. At first, it was just mild stomach pain. He brushed it off, saying, "It's probably just something I ate." He was always the strong one, the protector, the jokester, the one who made everyone else feel safe even when he wasn't. Amy had noticed the way he winced when he stood, the faint sweat on his forehead that didn't belong to the warm kitchen air. "Chris, maybe you ought to lie down," she said softly. "Nah," he replied, waving her off. "I've been through worse. This old body's tougher than it looks." But Amy's heart whispered something her mind didn't want to believe. An hour later, everything changed. Chris stood to clear his plate, and suddenly his face went pale. He gripped his side, gasping as his knees buckled beneath him. The sound of his chair hitting the floor shattered the quiet. "Chris!" Amy screamed, rushing to his side. Tammy froze in her chair, panic flooding her eyes. She tried to move, but her mobility made it hard. The world seemed to move in slow motion, Amy shouting his name. Brittany, his wife, running in from the living room with her phone in hand, dialing 911, her voice trembling as she cried for help. "Chris, stay with me! Look at me, please!" Amy begged, slapping his cheek lightly. His eyes fluttered, his lips turning pale, his breaths coming out in short, painful gasps. The sound of sirens tore through the cold Kentucky night. Within minutes, paramedics burst into the house. They lifted Chris onto a stretcher, attaching monitors, checking his pulse, his breathing, his blood pressure, all dropping fast. Amy rode in the ambulance, her hand gripping his, tears streaking down her face as the vehicle sped through the dark roads. Tammy followed behind in another car, sobbing uncontrollably. "This can't be happening," she whispered to herself over and over. "Not my brother. Not him." At the hospital, bright lights replaced the warmth of home. Doctors and nurses rushed Chris through the emergency room doors. The family watched helplessly as the medical team surrounded him, shouting numbers, calling for equipment, the beeping of machines filling the air. Amy stood frozen at the glass window, her reflection staring back at her, pale, terrified, desperate. Tammy sat trembling in her wheelchair, her oxygen machine humming softly beside her. She didn't say a word. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, a doctor stepped out, his expression grave. "Chris has suffered a severe medical emergency," he said, his voice steady but heavy. "His organs are under immense stress. We're doing everything possible, but we have to be honest. His condition is critical, and we're not sure he'll survive the night." Amy's scream echoed down the sterile hallway. Tammy broke down, crying harder than she had in years. Brittany collapsed into a chair, whispering through trembling lips, "Please, God, please don't take him." That night, time lost all meaning. Amy sat at his bedside, holding his hand as machines beeped in rhythm with his shallow breaths. She whispered softly, "You're my big brother. You're supposed to protect us. You can't leave now. You promised we'd get healthy together." Chris stirred slightly, his eyelids flickering open for just a second. His voice was barely a whisper. "Don't cry, sis. I'm still here." Those 4 words shattered Amy's heart even more. She gripped his hand tighter, afraid that if she let go, he'd slip away forever. Outside the hospital, news had already spread. Fans across social media began posting messages of prayer and shock. Headlines read, "Chris Combs from 1000 LB Sisters hospitalized in critical condition." By morning, Reporters and fans gathered outside the hospital, cameras flashing as Amy walked out briefly to call their mom. She begged them to stop filming, her voice breaking. "He's fighting for his life," she cried. "This isn't for TV, this is real." Inside, doctors worked tirelessly. They discovered that Chris had developed a severe infection, one that had spread quickly through his system, likely linked to previous surgeries. His immune system, already weakened, was struggling to fight it off. The family refused to leave his side. Amy and Tammy slept in waiting room chairs, taking turns at his bedside. Brittany stayed constantly by his hand, whispering prayers through the long, sleepless nights. Days blurred together. At one point, Amy posted a message online. "Please keep my brother in your prayers. He's fighting harder than ever. We believe in miracles." Thousands responded. Fans, other TLC stars, strangers from across the world. They sent messages of hope, faith, and love. But inside that hospital, hope felt fragile. The doctors warned that if Chris didn't respond to treatment soon, the family might have to prepare for the worst. Amy broke down one night, clutching one of Chris's old shirts to her chest. "He's the reason we all made it through," she said to Tammy through tears. "If we lose him, I don't know how we'll go on." Tammy, whose own journey had been defined by battles for survival, nodded slowly. For once, her voice was soft and clear. "If I could take his place, I would," she said. "He's always been the one holding us together." The hospital room became a sacred space. Photos of the family taped to the wall, a small cross by the bed. The hum of oxygen, the soft beep of monitors, the rhythm of faith and fear intertwined. Every tiny improvement, a twitch of his hand, a deeper breath, felt like a miracle. One night, as the moonlight filtered through the blinds, Amy whispered, "You're not done yet. Chris, you still have a story to tell." But Brittany had seen the look in the doctor's eyes earlier that day, that quiet, heartbreaking look when words failed. "We've done everything we can." Her tears fell silently as she held his hand, praying that his story wasn't about to end. The next morning came quietly. The sun rose over the hospital parking lot, bathing the building in soft gold. Inside, the Combs family huddled together in the same room where laughter had been replaced by whispers. No one knew what the next hour would bring. Amy stared at her brother's face, memorizing every detail. The lines that showed years of laughter. The rough hands that had built, cooked, hugged, protected. Tammy prayed quietly, her voice cracking. Brittany didn't move from his side, afraid that if she did, she'd lose him forever. And as the heart monitor continued its slow, fragile rhythm, the world outside kept waiting for news. But inside that small Kentucky hospital, the only thing that mattered was love, and a family holding on to faith, even as everything around them began to fall apart. Morning sunlight spilled through the thin hospital blinds, a faint reminder that another night had passed. Somehow. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was the only sound in Chris's room. It was steady, fragile, but it was there. Brittany sat in the same chair she hadn't left for 2 days. Her hair was messy, eyes red and swollen, hands trembling around a half-empty cup of cold coffee. She stared at her husband's face, pale, motionless, but still him. Amy was slumped at the foot of the bed, her hands clasped together, praying softly. Tammy sat near the corner, her oxygen machine whispering behind her. No one spoke. Every hour felt like a small victory. Every breath Chris took felt like a miracle. When the door opened, the soft squeak of the hinges startled them. 2 TLC producers stepped inside, not with cameras, but with hesitant looks. They weren't supposed to be there, but the network wanted an update. "How's Chris?" one of them asked quietly. Amy turned toward them, her expression cold and furious. "He's fighting for his life," she snapped. "So maybe you should turn those cameras off and let him fight in peace." The younger producer swallowed, glancing down awkwardly. "We're not filming," he said quickly. "The network's they're getting a lot of calls. Fans are worried. People are asking for updates." Tammy's voice cut through the tension. "Then tell them to pray, not watch." Her voice cracked, trembling on the last word. The producers exchanged a look, nodded, and backed out of the room without another word. For the next 2 days, the family barely left the hospital. Nurses brought blankets and coffee that went untouched. Time blurred into an endless loop of worry, exhaustion, and prayer. Every so often, a doctor entered with updates that never changed much. "We're doing everything we can," they said. But those words, everything we can, started to feel like a countdown. Started to feel like a countdown. Amy sat by her brother's side, replaying every memory she could think of. Him teaching her to ride a bike, the way he used to sneak snacks during their diets, his laugh that could fill a room. She wanted to remember all of it, just in case. Tammy tried to stay strong, but every time she saw the heart monitor dip, she broke down. "He's too good for this world," she whispered. "He doesn't deserve this." On the third night, everything spiraled. It was around 2 a.m. when the machine suddenly screamed, a high-pitched alarm that tore through the silence. Nurses burst through the door. "We need to clear the room." One shouted. Amy screamed, "No! I'm not leaving him." But the staff pushed her gently back as they swarmed Chris's bed. Brittany froze, her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Tammy sobbed uncontrollably as hospital security helped steady her wheelchair. "Please, please save him," Amy cried, her voice breaking. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the door opened. The doctor stepped out, exhaustion in his eyes. "He's stable for now," he said softly. "But his body is shutting down faster than expected. We need to prepare you all." "I'm sorry." Amy's legs gave out. She sank to the cold tile floor, shaking her head. No, you can't say that. He's still here. He's still fighting." The doctor placed a hand on her shoulder. "He is. But you should be ready for anything." Outside, the world had already found out. News broke across social media. Chris Combs from 1000 LB Sisters in critical condition. Photos of Amy crying outside the hospital surfaced. Tammy's wheelchair was seen near the ER entrance, her face buried in her hands. The hashtag started trending within hours. Just pray for Chris and stay strong, Combs family. Thousands of fans sent messages, prayers, and videos of support. Some even gathered outside the hospital, holding candles and posters with words like, "You got this, Chris." TLC released a short statement. "Our hearts are with Chris Combs and his family during this difficult time. Chris has been an inspiration to millions, and we are all hoping for his recovery." But behind the scenes, Amy was furious. She had caught glimpses of camera crews lingering in the parking lot, producers whispering near the nurses' station. And she knew what was coming. They wanted to film this. The pain. The tears. The heartbreak. Not for empathy. For ratings. Late that night, Amy cornered one of the producers in the hallway. Her voice was sharp, raw with anger. "If he dies and y'all try to air any of this, I swear I'll quit. I don't care about the show anymore." The producer raised his hands defensively. "Amy, we're not using anything without your permission, I promise. But people care about you all. They want to see your journey." Amy cut him off. "They want to see pain. That's all they ever wanted." "Well, they got it." She stormed away, tears blurring her vision. Inside the hospital room, Tammy was sinking into her own despair. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her therapist called, urging her to stay strong for her own health, but she ignored it. "What's the point?" she said quietly. "He's the only one who believed I could change. If I lose him, I'll go right back to who I was." Brittany barely left Chris's side. She held his hand, whispering stories from their life together, their first date, their wedding day, their dreams for the future. She spoke softly, as though reminding him of every reason to keep fighting. "Remember when we said we'd grow old on that porch swing?" she whispered. "You can't leave before that, baby. You just can't." Then, something miraculous happened. On the 5th day, Chris opened his eyes. At first, it was just a flicker. Then he blinked again. His lips moved slightly and Brittany gasped, calling Amy and Tammy into the room. "Chris, can you hear me?" Amy said, trembling. He nodded weakly. His voice was barely a whisper, but the words were clear. "I'm still here," Brittany broke down, crying uncontrollably as she held his hand. "Oh my God, Chris, you scared us to death." Tammy reached forward, clutching his arm. "You can't be doing this to us," she said through tears. He managed a faint grin. "You think I'd let a little hospital trip stop me?" He joked, his voice raspy but unmistakably him. It was the first time anyone in that room had laughed in days. The doctors entered, astonished. "He's conscious," one said, his tone cautious but hopeful. "This is a very good sign. But we need to take it slow." The family didn't care. For the first time in a week, hope filled the air. They prayed together, holding hands by his bedside. Over the next 2 days, Chris's condition improved slightly. He could speak for longer periods. He even joked with the nurses. "Guess y'all ain't getting rid of me that easy," he said, grinning faintly, but beneath that fragile hope, the darkness still lingered. Behind closed doors, doctors had discovered something new, something worse. The infection had spread deeper than they thought, damaging several major organs. Even if he survived this, his recovery would be long and uncertain. He'll need lifelong care, one specialist explained quietly to Brittany, and there's something else we need to test for. We found abnormal cells near the infection site. It could be cancerous. Brittany froze. "Cancer?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "We can't say for sure yet," the doctor said gently. "But we need to prepare for that possibility." That night, Amy stood outside the hospital, watching the sun dip below the horizon. She whispered into the fading light, "If he makes it through this, I'll never take another day for granted." Moments later, her phone buzzed. A message from a TLC insider flashed on the screen. "We heard Chris may have cancer complications. Can you confirm?" Amy's heart dropped. Her hands shook as she read the message again. She rushed back inside, demanding answers from the doctors. After a tense silence, one of them nodded. "We found signs that the infection may have originated from a cancerous source," he said softly. "We're running more tests, but we need to prepare you all. This could be far more serious than we thought." Amy's world collapsed all over again. She fell into Tammy's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. No, not him. Not after everything." Brittany stood in shock, covering her mouth. "He was just getting better," she whispered. "How can this be happening?" Within hours, the rumors spread online. Sources confirmed Chris Combs battling cancer complications. Headlines read. TLC stayed silent, but the leak was enough to ignite outrage from fans. Amy was furious. "Someone from inside had to have told them," she said bitterly. This was supposed to stay in the family. When Chris heard, he didn't flinch. He was tired, pale, but still managing a weak smile. "Let him talk," he said softly. "I ain't done fighting yet," Amy cried harder. "How can you be so calm?" "Because," he whispered, gripping her hand, "I've already been to hell and back. What's one more round?" And that night, as the family gathered around his bed, Amy, Tammy, Brittany, they made a silent promise. They would fight beside him. They would protect him from the cameras, the headlines, the world, no matter what came next. The next morning, the hospital felt heavier. The air was still, the hallways quieter than usual. Amy barely slept. Tammy hadn't spoken since the night before. Brittany's eyes were hollow from exhaustion. When the doctor entered Chris's room that morning, his expression said everything before he even spoke. Amy grabbed Brittany's hand. Tammy braced herself, her oxygen machine quietly humming beside her. "Mr. Combs," the doctor began, his voice steady but somber. "We've received your biopsy results. The abnormal cells we found were malignant. You have stage 2 pancreatic cancer?" The room went silent. No one breathed. The sound of the heart monitor filled the air. Beep, beep, beep. The only proof that time hadn't stopped. Brittany's body collapsed forward, her face buried in Chris's hand as she sobbed. "No, please. No, this can't be real." Amy stood frozen, her heart racing, her vision blurring. Tammy's face went pale. For a moment, she forgot to breathe through her tube. Chris didn't react immediately. He stared at the doctor, blank, processing the words. "Cancer," he whispered, testing the sound of it like it was foreign. "How long? How bad?" The doctor pulled up a chair. "We caught it earlier than we might have otherwise because of your infection," he explained. "That gives us a fighting chance. You'll need chemotherapy, maybe radiation, possibly another surgery. It won't be easy, but it's not hopeless." Brittany shook her head, crying harder. "He just got through one surgery. You can't tell me he has to go through another." The doctor nodded empathetically. "We'll take it one step at a time. Right now, we need to get you strong enough to begin treatment." Chris let out a long sigh. His eyes were wet, but his voice stayed calm. "All right then," he said quietly. "Let's do what we gotta do." Amy stared at him in disbelief. "How can you be so calm, Chris?" He looked up at her, managing a faint smile. "Because I ain't dead yet, sis. I still got work to do." That was Chris, always the fighter, always the one holding everyone else together. But once the doctor left, the cracks started to show. Brittany sat beside him, clutching his hand tightly. "You can't leave me," she whispered, trembling. "We were supposed to grow old together. You promised." Chris turned his head toward her, weak but sincere. "I ain't breaking no promises. I'm just gonna have to fight a little harder to keep him. Across the room, Amy covered her mouth, trying not to sob out loud. Tammy wheeled closer, tears rolling down her cheeks. I'd trade places with you if I could, she whispered. You've always been stronger than me. Could, she whispered. You've always been stronger than me. Chris smiled faintly. Tam, you're stronger than you think. You proved everybody wrong. You got healthy, you kept going when no one thought you could. That's real strength. Tammy shook her head. You gave me that strength. I can't do this without you. You ain't gonna have to, he said softly. We're gonna beat this together. For the next few days, the hospital became their world. Family came and went. Cousins, uncles, even their mom, Darlene, who hadn't been on camera for months. Everyone brought love, food, and prayers. Chris's diagnosis had already leaked online. Somehow, as it always did. The news headlines screamed, 1000 LB Sisters star Chris Combs diagnosed with cancer. Heartbreaking update, Combs family facing new battle. The fans responded in droves. Thousands of comments poured in. Stay strong, Chris. You've got this. We're praying for you. But among the support came the vultures. Tabloids began speculating about how bad it really was. Some even claimed TLC was already filming a cancer special. Amy was furious when she saw that headline. She immediately called one of the producers. You better tell me right now, is this true? Are y'all planning something? The producer hesitated. Amy, I don't know who leaked that. But the network has been discussing a possible special episode. Something that could help raise awareness and maybe even funds for Chris's treatment. Amy's blood boiled. You mean you want to film him sick? That's what you want. Another ratings boost off our pain. No, the producer said quickly. Amy, listen. We'd never exploit him. We're talking about showing his fight, his strength. The fans love him. They'd want to see his recovery, his courage. This could actually help. She hung up. That evening, she told Chris what the network wanted. He was silent for a long time. Then, with a deep breath, he said, Maybe they're right. Amy's eyes widened. What? Chris, you can't be serious. He looked at her calmly. If they film it, people will see what this really looks like. Maybe it helps someone else who's scared. Maybe it helps us pay the bills. Lord knows these treatments ain't cheap. Brittany shook her head in disbelief. Chris, I can't have cameras in your face while you're sick. He reached for her hand. I know, baby. But if my story helps one person not give up, then it's worth it. Amy bit her lip, torn between anger and heartbreak. She wanted to protect her brother, but she also knew. That's who Chris was. Always thinking about others first. A week later, TLC officially reached out with a proposal. A 3-part special titled Chris's Fight a 1000 LBI. Sister's Story. The offer came with a donation pledge. A portion of the earnings would go toward his treatment and to a cancer awareness charity. Still, the family was divided. Amy didn't trust the network. They say they'll help, but they'll just take the footage and twist it, she argued. Tammy surprisingly disagreed. Maybe this time it'll be different. Chris deserves to tell his story his way. Brittany stayed silent, her gaze fixed on the hospital floor. Finally, Chris spoke. If they're gonna tell it, then we do it on our terms. No fake stuff, no drama. Just real, the producers agreed. Filming began quietly, with small crews, no bright lights, no big cameras, just intimate, raw footage of Chris's recovery. His doctor visits, his moments with family, and for the first time, fans saw the real Chris Combs, vulnerable, scared, but still smiling. The first few chemotherapy sessions were brutal. Chris's energy drained quickly. His hands trembled. His appetite disappeared. But he still cracked jokes with the nurses. You'd think with all this treatment, I'd at least get some superpowers, he said weakly one day. Brittany laughed through her tears. You already got one. Stubbornness. By the second round of chemo, his hair began to fall out. Amy offered to shave her head in solidarity, but Chris stopped her. Don't you dare, he said with a small grin. You know you got a good head of hair. Let's keep at least one of us looking decent. The family laughed for the first time in weeks, but behind every laugh was fear. One night, while the cameras were gone, Amy caught Chris staring quietly out the window, lost in thought. What are you thinking about? She asked softly. He smiled faintly. Just wondering if I've done enough. Amy frowned. What do you mean? I mean, if I don't make it, will people remember me for something good? Or just for being on some reality show? Amy's voice broke. You changed lives, Chris. Mine, Tammy's. Thousands of people watching who felt like they couldn't change. You showed them they could. He nodded slowly. Then I guess that's enough. The following week, TLC aired the first teaser for the special. It showed flashes of hospital scenes, Chris holding Brittany's hand, Amy crying in a hallway, and Tammy saying, "We're not ready to lose him." The trailer ended with Chris's voice, raspy but strong. "No matter what happens, I want y'all to keep fighting. 'Cause life's too short to give up." The internet exploded. Fans flooded social media with messages of love and admiration. Donations poured in from across the country. Even other TLC stars posted their support, calling Chris a true inspiration. But not everyone was kind. Some accused TLC of exploiting his illness for profit. Others speculated that the family was faking the drama for publicity. Amy stopped reading the comments. "I can't handle this," she said. "People don't see the nights I cry myself to sleep. They don't see the hospital bills piling up." Tammy, however, stayed firm. "Ignore 'em. We know the truth. Weeks passed. The chemo took its toll, but Chris fought on. His weight dropped drastically, his skin pale, his voice weaker, but his spirit stayed the same. One afternoon, a nurse caught him humming softly to himself, smiling despite the pain. "You seem in good spirits today," she said kindly. Chris looked up at her. "Every day I wake up's a good day," he said simply. As the months went on, his condition fluctuated, small victories followed by setbacks. The doctors warned that remission would be a long, uncertain road. Through it all, TLC kept filming. The family kept showing up. And the fans kept believing. Then one day, out of nowhere, a test result came back, and it changed everything. Chris's latest scans showed no signs of active cancer. The doctors couldn't believe it. The family cried tears of joy. Brittany hugged him so tightly the nurse had to remind her to give him space to breathe. Tammy sobbed openly. "You did it, Chris. You really did it." Amy kissed his forehead. "I told you God wasn't done with you yet." The news spread like wildfire. Headlines read, "Chris Combs declared cancer-free. Miracle recovery shocks fans." But even as the world celebrated, Chris stayed humble. "It ain't a miracle," he said during his final confessional. "It's faith, family, and fight. That's all." He paused, looking straight into the camera. "If you're watching this, and you feel like giving up, don't. You might just be one more sunrise away from your miracle." After the announcement that Chris was cancer-free, the mood around the Combs Slaton family shifted like a storm breaking into sunshine. For the first time in months, laughter echoed again through the house. The smell of cooking filled the kitchen, something hearty and comforting like Amy's famous chicken casserole. The TV hummed softly in the background, playing reruns of 1000 LB Sisters, but this time the family didn't cringe at seeing themselves. They smiled, because now it wasn't just a show. It was proof of survival. Chris sat on the porch one afternoon, a blanket draped over his lap. His hair was still thin from chemo, but his eyes looked brighter than they had in years. A cup of coffee steamed in his hands as Brittany joined him, settling into the chair beside him. "You know," she said softly, "you scared the life out of me." He chuckled weakly. "Guess I still got that effect on people." Brittany smiled, brushing his arm gently. "You look good. I feel human again," he admitted. "Still tired, but not broken. That's new for me. The fresh air, the hum of cicadas, and the soft pink horizon felt like peace. Something he hadn't felt in a long time." Inside, Tammy was helping Amy edit a short thank you video for their fans. Since the TLC special aired, their inboxes had been flooded with thousands of messages. People sent letters, handmade cards, and care packages. A woman from Kentucky wrote that Chris's courage had inspired her to finally start chemo. A man from Texas said Chris's story convinced him to reconnect with his estranged brother. It was overwhelming, but in the best way possible. Amy pressed play on the laptop and smiled as the clip rolled. Chris thanking fans, Tammy crying in the background, and Brittany holding his hand. Tammy sniffled. "I can't watch this without bawlin'." Amy grinned. "That's kind of the point, Tam. People love the tears." Tammy laughed, wiping her eyes. "Well, they're getting plenty of those." For weeks after the special aired, TLC reported record-breaking viewership. The network even sent flowers and a framed photo of the family with a note that read, "To the strongest family we've ever filmed. Thank you for letting us tell your story. But fame has its own kind of weight. Suddenly, every public appearance turned into a media circus. Fans recognized them in grocery stores, restaurants, even the hospital when Chris came for his checkups. "Y'all saved my life," a woman cried one day, hugging Tammy outside a Walmart. Tammy smiled shyly, signing an autograph. "Thank you, honey. Keep fighting, okay?" Amy handled it well. She had been through the chaos of fame before. But Brittany wasn't used to it. The cameras, the questions, the constant attention, it wore her down. At home one night, she finally snapped. "I can't even go get groceries without people asking how my husband's doing," she said, slamming her purse on the counter. They mean well, but it's too much. It's like they all watched him almost die, and now they act like they own a piece of him. Chris looked up from the recliner, his expression gentle. "They care, baby. That's all it is. I know, but I don't want sympathy every time I leave the house." "I just want normal," Chris sighed. "Ain't no normal for us anymore, Britt. We're public now." "That's the trade," her voice cracked. "But I didn't ask for that trade." That silence between them lingered, the kind of silence that meant something deeper than either wanted to admit. Over the following months, Chris continued his recovery. His energy came back slowly. The color returned to his face. The doctors were thrilled with his progress, though they warned him to stay cautious. Cancer had a way of sneaking back. But Chris wasn't content with just surviving. He wanted purpose. He started volunteering at the local wellness center, talking to other patients who were struggling with obesity or chronic illness. He told them his story, the surgeries, the near-death moments, the cancer battle. He told them about the fear, but also about the faith. "Don't let the weight define you," he told a group one morning. "Don't let sickness win twice, once in your body and once in your mind. You fight both." People listened. Some cried. Others just nodded silently, holding on to his words like they were lifelines. Back home, Amy and Tammy were planning a small family celebration. They wanted to mark 6 months cancer-free with a backyard BBQ. Something simple, something real. When the day arrived, the backyard was full of laughter. Balloons, folding chairs, music, the smell of ribs on the grill. For once, it felt like old times, before the fame, before the hospitals, before the chaos. Chris stood near the grill, tongs in hand, a proud grin on his face. "Look at us," he said, flipping burgers. "Ain't nobody crying or cussing, that's a first," Amy laughed. "Give it time." Tammy sat under an umbrella sipping sweet tea. "I'm just glad we're all together again," she said. "Feels like we've been through a war." Brittany nodded. "We have. But we made it out." As the evening went on, the sunset painted the sky orange and gold. Chris looked around, at his wife, his sisters, the kids running through the grass, and he realized this was it. The miracle wasn't just in the hospital scans or the TV ratings. The miracle was this: family. After the party, as everyone packed up, Amy pulled Chris aside. "Hey," she said softly, "you ever think about what's next?" He shrugged. "Next? I'm just trying to enjoy the now." "No, I mean, like, what if TLC wants another season?" He chuckled. "You mean they ain't done milking us yet?" Amy smirked. "You know they ain't. They already emailed me," he sighed. "And what did you say?" "I said I'd talk to you first." Chris leaned back in his chair, thinking. "I don't know, Amy. I'm grateful, but I kind of just want peace. I don't need cameras in my face while I'm learning how to live again." Amy nodded. "I get that. But you know, fans are going to want updates. You're kind of the heart of this family now." He smiled faintly. "Heart, huh? Don't tell Tammy that." But Amy was right. The network wasn't done with them. Within weeks, TLC reached out again, this time with a new offer, a season focused on life after survival. The producers pitched it as uplifting, a return to joy. "This season won't be about struggle," they promised. "It's about victory. About how far you've come." It sounded good on paper. But when filming began, the old tension crept back in, cameras following them everywhere. Directors pushing for emotional moments. Interview questions that reopened wounds. Brittany hated it. "Every time I walk into a room, there's a camera pointed at my face," she whispered to Amy one afternoon on set. "I can't do this again." Amy put an arm around her. "I know, hun, but it's just how they work." "They want real moments," Brittany shook her head. "Then they should live with us for a week and see the real ones. Me crying in the bathroom because I'm scared it'll come back. That's real." Meanwhile, Tammy was thriving under the cameras. She'd lost even more weight, started doing motivational content online, and for the first time in her life, people weren't calling her lazy or cruel. They were calling her inspiring. It caused friction. Amy noticed it first, the unspoken competition between Tammy's newfound fame and Chris's quiet healing. Tammy loved the spotlight. Chris was starting to hate it. One day during filming, they clashed on camera. Tammy was excitedly talking about her latest online milestone, 2 million followers, while Chris was sitting nearby, pale and exhausted from a bad chemo after effect that had resurfaced. "I just think it's amazing," Tammy said proudly. "People are finally seeing the good side of me." Chris smiled weakly. "That's great, Tam. You deserve it." But when she kept talking, he muttered under his breath, "Wish I had that kind of energy." Tammy stopped mid-sentence. "What's that supposed to mean?" He shook his head. "Nothing. I'm just tired." "No, go on," she pressed. "You think I'm making this about me?" He looked up, meeting her eyes. "Ain't that what it's always about?" The crew went silent. Amy froze. Brittany turned away. Tammy's face went red. "I've worked hard for this, Chris. Don't you dare make me feel bad for finally having something good." He sighed. "I ain't making you feel bad, Tam. I'm tired of everything being a storyline. Can't we just live?" She blinked hard, her voice cracking. "You think I wanted to be famous for being fat and almost dying? No one asked for this life. We just ended up here." The silence afterward was brutal. The cameras caught every second. When the episode aired months later, TLC edited it into a dramatic confrontation. Slow music, close-ups, confessional tears. Fans called it the most emotional moment in the season. But behind the scenes, it left scars. Chris stopped filming for a while after that. He told the crew he needed space, and they respected it, reluctantly. Brittany encouraged him to step back completely. "You don't owe them anything," she said. "You've given them your pain, your story, your recovery. That's enough." But Chris wasn't sure. "What if people need to see the after too? Not just the fight, the living part," she smiled sadly. "Then show them that, but off camera." Months passed quietly after filming wrapped. The show aired, the fans cheered, and life, real life, settled back in. Chris spent his mornings gardening, afternoons walking in the park, evenings with Brittany watching old movies. The peace he'd been craving finally returned. Then, one rainy night in early spring, he got a call from his doctor. His latest blood work showed something unexpected.